Hey guys, Fletch here. I'll bring you another Fletch Talks video, and this video is going to be about the confirmation that Norwich City have been relegated from the Premier League. Yes, the seemingly inevitable has come to fruition. The writing had seemed to be on the wall for some time, but finally, following a 4-0 defeat to West Ham today, Norwich have become the first team of the 2019-2020 season to be relegated from the Championship, and that obviously now means that next season they will be playing their football in the Championship. And really, when you look at this season as a whole for Norwich, they've been saying it all along that they saw this season as a bit of a free swing. They weren't expected to be promoted to the Premier League from the Championship last season, and Daniel Farke has said all along that this is a bit of a free swing for Norwich, for them, a season for them to enjoy, for their fans to enjoy, and they just really see where it takes them. So what really went wrong? Well, let's start with the manager. Now, when you look at Daniel Farke, I like him. I quite like him as a manager. I think he speaks and he carries himself really well, and he seems like quite down to earth and realistic in that sense, and he also has a decent style of football that I quite admire and enjoy to watch. Now, you could argue that he's a bit stubborn in his tactical approach, like playing the ball out from the back, as I mentioned, and maybe his lack of flexibility in that area cost him plenty of points and games this season. So in a way, I can kind of admire him for that, and I admire him as a person, but I can understand that for Norwich supporters this season, it might have been extremely frustrating for them that they probably had lost points when they really might not have done if maybe tactics and things like that had changed. Next, we'll move on to their squad. Their squad seemed a bit of a young and inexperienced squad. It was sprinkled in with a few experienced players here and there, but the majority seemed quite young and inexperienced at this top level. And I will be honest with you, at the beginning of the season, I actually backed them to possibly surprise some people by staying up, but ultimately I think this was a major contributor to their downfall. This, and along with a lack of investment by the club, I believe that Norwich were the Premier League's lowest spenders in the transfer market this season, so that didn't help either. But when you combine all of these things together, the lack of investment, the young and inexperienced squad, and at times the manager's stubbornness not to change up his tactics and adapt to certain situations within certain games, it left the Canaries, obviously, as we now know, sitting rock bottom of the Premier League with 21 points from 35 games, with a record of 5 wins, 6 draws and 24 losses. And to add on to that, there is now no win in their last 7 games for the Canaries. When you look at that, it looks poor. And when you look at further into their stats, and like, for example, their defensive record and their goal scoring record, it makes for much, much, much worse of a reading. You look at their defensive record in the league. They have the worst defensive record in the league this season, conceding 67 goals this season. That is poor for a side that are facing an already uphill struggle to stay up in the top flight division. And when you add on to that they are also the lowest goal scorers in the Premier League with 26 goals, it makes it much worse. 11 of those goals came from their striker Teemu Pukki, and 6 of them came from their attacking midfielder Todd Cantwell. And if they weren't firing, they didn't really have anyone consistent enough or prolific enough in front of goal elsewhere to contribute to the goal scoring. And I'll say this now, like, if you're not scoring enough goals, you've got to make sure you're not conceding goals either. Sheffield United, perfect example of that. They don't really score too many, but they don't really concede many either. That's why they've got such a good defensive record. Norwich haven't been able to do that, and ultimately that's why Norwich have failed and have already gone back down this season. But despite an obviously a disappointing result in being relegated, there are a few things that maybe the Canaries can look back on and admire. The obvious standout, and which moment that stands head and shoulders above the rest, is clearly the 3-2 victory over Manchester City, for example, at the beginning stages of this season. That was a clear and obvious standout performance, a great performance, a fantastic result along with other victories such as the likes of the Everton victory and the Leicester City victory they picked up along the season as well. There were also some standout performances from key players. You look at the likes of Max Aarons, Todd Cantwell, Timu Puki and Emi Buendia. They had some great performances at various points this season, and Max Aarons in particular was a standout performer, a consistent performer along them lines. But the downside, of course, to that is if you start building up a reputation for yourself, then there's a very good chance that transfer speculation could be following your name, especially going into what would now be the transfer window. So keeping them players might be another tough battle that Norwich are about to participate in. They are obviously going to be the subject of much transfer speculation with cut prices and everything that goes into them going down to the Championship. So there's a possibility that them kind of players will be staying in the Premier League, but at the same time there's a very good chance that Norwich will have to reduce prices for that to suit not only their needs but for the needs of the players as well. For Norwich now, where does their future go? Well, we already know that definitely they'll be playing in the Championship for next season. It's a possibility that they could do what Burnley did a few years ago, which was yo-yo between the two leagues. Burnley did it a few years ago. They went down to the Championship following a battling sort of season in the Premier League where they just couldn't quite keep their heads above water. But then they came back the following season and have now become a bit of a regular in the Premier League over the past few seasons. So that's definitely a possibility, but there's going to be a few conditions to that, of course. It's going to rely on if the manager stays, or even if he doesn't, who they get in afterwards, as to can that manager take them back to the Premier League. And also, and I think this is the biggest factor in this, they're going to have to keep their current squad together. As I previously mentioned, a lot of players this season put in some standout and consistent performances, and they're going to be subject to much transfer speculation. So they're going to face a definite uphill battle to keep them kind of players. And add on to that, there was also reports of wage cuts coming in for a number of players, and a lot of big clubs are surrounding those kind of players along them lines. So it will be very difficult for Norwich to keep them players as a whole. And they are going to be facing another battle straight after the battle of trying to stay up in the Premier League. But of course, this is just one man's thoughts and one man's opinions on this particular subject. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what you made of Norwich's season. What do you think of their squad as a whole? Do you think that they'll bounce back next season for the Championship? I want to know what you guys think, so leave your thoughts, comments, opinions in the comment section below. That'd be great to read. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things would be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch, this has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see and speak with you all again soon in another video.